She dragged him
You
into
thought
her
you could get
shelter,
away
but
with
there
it,
was a
didn't
price
you?
to pay. The
Well,
storm
you
had
were
been
wrong.
relentless for hours.
This ends
Ethan
now.
stumbled through the rocky landscape, each step sinking slightly into the strange, mossy ground that seemed almost alive. Lightning arced across the dark sky, illuminating jagged cliffs and twisted trees that swayed violently in the wind. His ship, a small research vessel, had crash-landed days ago, and he had been surviving on rations that were running dangerously low. The planet was unlike any he had studied before. Its atmosphere crackled with electricity, and the temperature fluctuated wildly. At times it was freezing, and then in the next moment the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Ethan's suit was torn in places from the crash, exposing him to the harsh elements, and he could feel his energy slipping away with every passing hour. As he trudged forward, he thought he saw a shadow moving among the twisted trees. His heart raced. He had encountered wildlife before, large predators with razor-sharp claws, but this figure moved differently. It didn't run, it waited. Suddenly, a voice cut through the roaring wind. "Ethan, over here!" He froze, trying to locate the source of the sound. Out of the storm, a woman appeared, moving swiftly yet cautiously. Her dark hair whipped around her face, and her eyes, sharp and alert, scanned him quickly. She was human like him, yet she radiated a confidence and strength he had never seen before. Without hesitation, she grabbed his arm. "Come, move!" she shouted, pulling him toward a narrow ravine. The wind howled in their ears, threatening to push them apart, but she didn't let go. Ethan stumbled but managed to keep up, his strength waning with every step. After what felt like hours, though it was likely only minutes, they arrived at a small opening hidden behind a cluster of jagged rocks. The woman shoved Ethan inside. The interior was dimly lit, carved into the rock, and surprisingly warm compared to the freezing storm outside. Ethan gasped for breath, finally able to sit down. Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I'm Lyra," the woman replied. She didn't sound friendly, but she didn't sound hostile either. "And you're lucky I found you when I did. This storm can kill in minutes." Ethan looked around the shelter. It was crude but efficient. Makeshift walls of metal scraps reinforced the natural rock, and strange devices hummed quietly in the background. Some appeared to collect water from the air, while others generated a faint, steady warmth. This place," Ethan began. "How did you?" Lyra cut him off with a wave of her hand. "No time for questions. You need food, warmth, and shelter, and I can provide it, but everything comes at a price." Ethan frowned. "A price?" Lyra's eyes hardened. "Yes. Survival here isn't free. You follow my rules, you work and you learn. Fail and you won't last long. This world doesn't forgive weakness." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had survived many challenges before, but this was different. This planet seemed alive, almost sentient in the way it resisted him at every step. Yet there was no choice. He nodded slowly. "I'll do whatever it takes." Lyra didn't smile, but she didn't look disappointed either. "Good, rest for now. We'll talk more later." Ethan leaned against the cool rock, letting exhaustion take over. He couldn't help but notice the ingenuity of the shelter. Small streams of water trickled from hidden pipes into containers, and strange panels absorbed light from faint openings above. Everything had a purpose, and everything was designed to keep someone alive in a world that wanted them dead. After a while, Lyra brought him a small meal, nutrient-rich paste mixed with dried fruits. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give him energy. As he ate, he asked, "How long have you been here?" Lyra hesitated. "Years. This planet, it's not for the weak. I've learned its secrets, its dangers, and its patterns. If you want to survive here, you'll have to learn too." Ethan nodded, though he felt a flicker of doubt. He had survived space travel, hostile planets, and extreme conditions before, but nothing like this. Yet he felt something stir inside him. Humans were made to adapt. Humans were made to endure, and he wouldn't give up now. Night fell quickly. The storm outside persisted, lashing the rock shelter with wind and rain. Ethan lay on a thin bedroll, listening to the hum of Lyra's machines. He felt the weight of the planet pressing down on him, but he also felt a strange sense of hope. He wasn't alone anymore, and maybe that was enough to keep him alive. The next morning, Lyra woke him early. "We don't have much time," she said. "I need to show you something important." Ethan followed her deeper into the shelter, down narrow tunnels carved into the rock. He noticed that every step seemed purposeful. Every panel, pipe, and wire had a function he couldn't yet understand. They reached a chamber filled with strange equipment. Tanks of water, energy cores that pulsed with light, and devices that Ethan couldn't even begin to identify. This is your first lesson, Lyra said. Everything here is connected. Every system, every resource. If one fails, all of us could die. You'll learn to maintain them. You'll learn to protect them. And you'll learn to trust me. Ethan nodded, absorbing the enormity of the task. He had always thought of survival as simple. Find shelter, find food, avoid danger. But here, survival was more than that. It was a delicate balance of knowledge, skill, and instinct, and he would have to prove himself worthy to even stand a chance. Over the next few days, Lyra put Ethan to work. He learned to repair small devices, purify water, and set traps to catch the planet's unusual wildlife. At first, he struggled, frustrated by the complexity of everything. But Lyra was patient, watching, guiding, and correcting him when necessary. Slowly, he began to understand the rhythms of the shelter and the planet outside. One evening, while repairing a solar panel, Ethan asked, "Why help me? You could have left me to die." Lyra didn't answer immediately. She tightened a bolt, then finally said, "Because humans like you, like us, can survive. Most won't, but some will. And those who survive can change everything. That's why I dragged you here. You have potential, but potential alone won't be enough. You'll have to earn it." Ethan felt a spark of determination. He wasn't just surviving for himself anymore. He was surviving to prove he could rise to the challenge. Humans had always faced impossible odds, and time and again they had prevailed. He would do the same here, no matter what the planet threw at him. As the days passed, Ethan's skills grew. He moved through the shelter with increasing confidence, repaired devices without guidance, and even began to predict the storms. He and Lyra developed a silent understanding, communicating with gestures and glances when words weren't necessary. The bond of survival was forming, one built on trust, respect, and shared hardship. One night, Ethan stood at the entrance of the shelter, looking out at the storm. Lightning split the sky, and he felt the wind on his face. Despite the danger, despite the harshness of the world, he felt alive. This planet was trying to break him, but he wouldn't let it. Humans were not so easily defeated. And then in the distance, he saw movement among the trees, something large, something intelligent. His heart raced. The storm wasn't the only danger here, but this time he didn't feel fear, he felt readiness. He was no longer just a survivor. He was becoming a part of this world, learning its rules and preparing for what came next. Lyra appeared beside him, silent, her eyes following his gaze. She nodded once. "Soon, you'll understand what I meant by the price. Survival is never free, but if you can endure, if you can learn, you can thrive. That's what humans do." Ethan looked at her and nodded. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. He had been dragged into the shelter, yes, but he was here to stay. And he would pay any price necessary, not out of fear, but to prove the power of human resilience. The storm raged on outside, but inside the shelter, two humans prepared to face a world that wanted to crush them. Together they would learn, survive, and perhaps someday master it. The morning sun barely pierced the storm clouds, casting a dull gray light across the rocky landscape. Inside the shelter, Ethan was awake before Lyra, inspecting the tools and devices he had helped repair the previous day. The hum of energy cores and the soft trickle of water in the purification tanks gave him a strange comfort. He felt more confident now, more capable, but he also knew that surviving here required more than confidence. It required discipline, endurance, and understanding. Lyra entered without knocking, her footsteps silent against the stone floor. She carried a small device in her hands, one Ethan had never seen before. "Today you learn about the real price of staying here," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Not just labor, not just following rules. The price is responsibility. Everything we have, every device, every system depends on humans being capable of managing it. If we fail, we die." Ethan listened intently. He had begun to realize that Lyra's shelter was more than a safe place. It was a fortress, a living system that responded to the planet's harshness. The water traps, energy panels, and climate regulators were all part of a delicate balance. One mistake could throw everything into chaos. Lyra handed him the device. "This monitors the outer environment. It records temperature, pressure, and predator movement. You'll need to check it every 2 hours and respond to changes immediately. Miss something, and the consequences are yours." Ethan took the device, feeling its weight and importance. He nodded. "I understand." Lyra's eyes softened slightly. "I hope so. The planet doesn't forgive mistakes, and neither do I, but I believe humans can adapt. That's why you're here." The first task came quickly. As Ethan followed Lyra through the shelter's narrow tunnels, alarms began to hum softly. The water levels in one of the external tanks had dropped unusually fast. Lyra gestured toward the opening outside. "Go, check it." Ethan hesitated for only a moment. The wind outside was still strong, carrying rain and the scent of the strange, mossy plants. He stepped into the open and quickly assessed the tank. One of the collection pipes had broken, spilling water into the rocky soil. He knelt trying to fix it as rain pelted his face and lightning lit the sky. Minutes felt like hours, but finally he secured the pipe. As he stood, Lyra appeared beside him. "Good," she said. "You acted fast, but noticed the signs. Why did it fail?" "What can prevent it from happening again?" Ethan thought carefully. "The joint was weak. We could reinforce it with extra supports, maybe add a backup flow system in case it breaks again." Lyra nodded, pleased. "Exactly. Surviving here isn't just fixing problems, it's anticipating them. That's the price. Every day you spend here, you pay it with effort, focus, and thinking ahead. Humans can do this. Most species can't." For the rest of the day, Ethan and Lyra worked side by side, reinforcing devices, testing sensors, and tracking the unusual wildlife outside. The creatures were fascinating. Some were small and swift, others large and cunning, moving almost as if they were observing the humans every step. Ethan felt a thrill he hadn't experienced in years. Danger was everywhere, yes, but it demanded ingenuity, and humans had plenty of that. Later, during a brief meal, Ethan asked cautiously, "Lyra, how did you survive all this time alone?" She paused, staring into her food, and then said, "Observation, patience, and rules. I learned the patterns of this planet, the storms, the animals, the way the ground absorbs water. I built this shelter slowly, piece by piece, and I adapted to every mistake. Humans are survivors, but survival requires respect for the rules of the environment. Disrespect them and you die, that's the price." Ethan thought about the word price. At first, he had imagined it as something harsh, a punishment or a penalty, but now he understood. The price wasn't suffering, it was responsibility, it was commitment. It was proving that humans could endure and overcome challenges where others might fail. That evening, as the storm returned, Lyra led him outside again, this time to a cliff overlooking the forested plains. Lightning flashed across the horizon, revealing massive creatures moving in the distance, their eyes glinting in the dim light. "These are the predators," she said. "They're intelligent more than you might expect. They observe, they hunt in groups, and they adapt to traps quickly. You need to understand them if you want to survive." Ethan watched the creatures, feeling a mixture of fear and admiration. "How do you keep them away?" he asked. Lyra smiled faintly. "Not by hiding. By predicting them, by creating systems that guide their behavior, confuse them, and protect us. That's what humans do best. We adapt, we plan, we innovate. That's why I believe in paying the price. Those who do survive. Those who don't last." Over the next days, Ethan's training intensified. He learned to maintain the shelter's energy cores, adjust water flows, and repair solar panels. Lyra introduced him to more advanced techniques, like setting up sensors to track predator movement and analyzing plant growth to predict food availability. Each task required careful observation, critical thinking, and precise execution. One afternoon, while repairing a damaged sensor, Ethan noticed something unusual, a set of tracks leading toward the shelter. They weren't like the predator tracks he had seen before. These were larger, more deliberate. "Lyra," he said, pointing. "Someone or something came this way." Her expression darkened. "Good, you noticed it. Most people wouldn't. That's part of the price. You see what others miss. Now let's figure out who or what it is." They followed the tracks carefully, using their knowledge of the terrain and predator behavior to predict movement patterns. After a tense hour, they discovered the source. A small group of intelligent creatures, about the size of humans, observing from a distance. They didn't attack, but their eyes were calculating. Lyra's voice was calm but firm. "We don't panic, we study, we plan. That's how humans survive. Remember, Ethan, the price isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, strategic. Every decision counts." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The shelter, the systems, the food, and their very survival depended on human intelligence, observation, and courage. That night, as they returned to the shelter, Ethan lay awake, thinking. The planet was dangerous, unpredictable, and alive in a way that challenged every skill he had. But he also realized something important. He was learning, growing, adapting. Every mistake, every success, every moment of observation was a lesson. And he was paying the price willingly, not out of fear, but out of desire to survive and thrive. Over the following week, Ethan became more confident. He anticipated storms, repaired systems before they failed, and even began to notice patterns in the predator behavior. Lyra allowed him more freedom, observing quietly as he made decisions and took initiative. She corrected him when necessary, but she also let him learn from small mistakes. One evening, while testing a water filtration system, Ethan asked, "Lyra, what happens if we succeed?" "If we survive," she paused, looking out at the stormlit horizon. "Then we thrive. Humans are meant to thrive. We're not just survivors. We innovate, we adapt, we build. The price we pay is effort, focus, and resilience. But the reward is life, growth, and possibility. That's what makes humans extraordinary." Ethan felt a surge of determination. He understood now that the price wasn't a punishment, it was a challenge, and humans were made to rise to challenges. He had been dragged into this shelter, yes, but he would not just survive. He would learn, adapt, and prove that humans could flourish even in the harshest conditions. Days passed, blending into nights, and the planet's storms showed no mercy. Yet with each passing day, Ethan felt stronger, more capable. He repaired systems faster, predicted environmental changes accurately, and even set up defenses that improved the shelter's safety. Lyra watched, silently approving, and occasionally nodded when Ethan made a particularly clever adjustment. Then one night, a strange sound echoed from the outer perimeter, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from deep within the forest. Ethan's heart raced. He knew the creatures were intelligent and could attack if threatened. Lyra appeared beside him, silently gesturing toward the perimeter sensors. "Your turn," she said. "Use everything you've learned, predict, prepare, protect." Ethan moved quickly, checking each sensor, reinforcing barriers, and setting traps that would alert them if the predators approached. Every movement was deliberate, every decision critical. And when the creatures finally arrived, their curiosity met with well-prepared defenses. They hesitated and retreated. Ethan exhaled deeply, a mix of relief and pride washing over him. He had passed the first real test, not because of brute force, but because of preparation, intelligence, and careful observation. He had paid the price and earned survival. Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting both approval and challenge. This is just the beginning. The planet tests everything, but humans rise, never forget that. Ethan nodded, finally understanding. The price was not punishment, it was commitment, intelligence, courage, and resilience. And he was ready to pay it every day. The morning light broke through the dense clouds, casting pale streaks across the rocky terrain. Ethan stood at the edge of the shelter, inspecting the sensors and water systems. Each device hummed steadily, a quiet reassurance that their haven was functioning as it should. Yet beneath the surface of calm, a sense of unease lingered. Lyra joined him without a word, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. She had become his guide, his mentor, and his partner in survival. Though her expression was often stern, Ethan had begun to understand the subtle hints of approval in her gaze. He was learning not just to survive, but to think, anticipate, and act. "Storm approaching," Lyra said, pointing to a cluster of dark clouds forming far away. "But that's not what worries me." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Look closely," she replied, gesturing toward the forest line. "Movement, they're coming closer." Ethan squinted, trying to discern what she meant. At first, he saw nothing, just shadows shifting among the twisted trees. But then he noticed it, a series of hulking shapes moving deliberately, almost in formation. He recognized the predators Lyra had warned him about, but these were different, larger, more coordinated, their eyes glowing faintly as they observed the shelter. "They're testing us," Lyra said, her voice calm but tense. "They sense weakness. Humans who hesitate will fail." But we were ready. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. He had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. The predators were intelligent, adaptive, and relentless. Any mistake could mean disaster. He checked the sensors one last time, ensuring that every alert and barrier was functioning. Then, without hesitation, he followed Lyra to the outer perimeter. The creatures had come closer, their movements precise, almost calculated. Ethan noticed how they avoided the traps and obstacles they had set. They were learning from every step, every pattern. He felt a pang of respect. These creatures were dangerous, yes, but their intelligence made the challenge worthwhile. Lyra handed him a small, reinforced baton. "Sometimes survival isn't just preparation," she said. "Sometimes you must act, observe, predict, and strike when necessary." The first predator emerged from the shadows, its massive form blending with the dark rocks. Ethan's heart pounded, but he focused. He remembered Lyra's lessons: anticipate movement, use the environment, and coordinate actions. He raised the baton, prepared not to fight blindly but to control the encounter strategically. Lyra moved beside him, silent and precise. Together, they set off a series of alarms and traps, guiding the predator toward a containment zone. The creature hesitated, then lunged. Ethan sidestepped, using the momentum of its charge to direct it into a net trap. Lyra swiftly secured it, and for a moment they had a small victory. But then more emerged, 3, then 5, moving with intelligence, avoiding traps and using the terrain to their advantage. Ethan realized that this was not just a hunt, it was a test. The predators were learning, adapting, and pushing their limits. "Focus!" Lyra shouted. "Stay calm, work together." Ethan did. He moved quickly, checking traps, adjusting barriers, and predicting the creature's next moves. Each decision was critical. One misstep could result in the predators breaching the shelter. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The storm raged in the distance, adding to the chaos. Lightning illuminated the predators as they tried to encircle the shelter. Ethan noticed a weak point near the eastern barrier, a gap the creatures were moving toward. He shouted to Lyra, and together they reinforced it, using rocks, metal scraps, and quick thinking. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the predators retreated, frustrated and cautious. Ethan's arms ached, his clothes were torn, and sweat and rain drenched him. But they had survived. Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment, then she nodded. "You did well, you adapted, you stayed focused. That's the price and the reward. Humans survive because we learn, we plan, and we act. That's what sets us apart." Ethan felt a swell of pride mixed with exhaustion. He had faced danger head-on, and he had survived. More importantly, he had learned that survival was not about brute force alone. It was about observation, strategy, and courage. Humans were capable of more than raw strength, and he was beginning to understand that fully. That night, as the storm finally passed, Ethan and Lyra sat together in the shelter's main chamber, tending to repairs and reviewing the traps. Every device, every barrier had been tested, and many required maintenance. The predators had not been defeated, only deterred. Ethan realized that survival here would be a continuous challenge, demanding constant attention and adaptation. Lyra broke the silence. "You see, Ethan, the price isn't just physical work. It's vigilance, intelligence, and persistence. You can't relax, can't become complacent. That's why humans thrive where others fail. We learn from every encounter, every failure, every success." Ethan nodded. "I understand now. It's not punishment, it's preparation, and it's what makes humans strong." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Exactly. And now that you've faced your first real threat, the learning begins in earnest. You've paid the first price. There are more to come." Over the next few days, Ethan and Lyra worked tirelessly to reinforce the shelter. They repaired damaged traps, improved the water collection system, and tested new defensive mechanisms. Ethan began to anticipate the predators' behavior before they moved, setting up strategies that even Lyra hadn't tried. She watched him closely, occasionally stepping in with corrections, but mostly allowing him to learn through action. One evening, as they adjusted a set of perimeter sensors, Ethan asked, "Lyra, do you ever feel fear, facing all this alone for so long?" Lyra considered the question. "Fear is natural, but fear doesn't stop humans. It teaches us, sharpens our senses, and reminds us to respect the world. I've felt fear every day, but I've also felt the power of preparation, strategy, and perseverance. That's what keeps me alive." Ethan realized that this was another lesson of the planet. Survival required not only action but understanding. Fear was a tool, not a weakness. It honed his instincts, pushed him to think critically, and made him value every decision he made. Then one night a new sound echoed outside, a low, rhythmic drumming that reverberated through the rock walls of the shelter. Ethan froze. Lyra's eyes narrowed. This sound was different from the predator's usual growls. It was deliberate, almost communicative. "They've learned more," Lyra whispered. "They're intelligent, they're observing patterns, perhaps communicating. This is more than a test, it's a challenge." Ethan's heart raced. This was no longer just survival, it was a battle of wits. Humans, he realized, were uniquely suited to such a challenge. Where other species might panic or retreat, humans could plan, adapt, and act. He felt a strange exhilaration. This planet was dangerous, yes, but it demanded ingenuity, and humans, by nature, possessed it. For the next several hours, Ethan and Lyra monitored the outer perimeter, setting up traps, adjusting sensors, and predicting movement patterns. Every choice mattered. Every second counted. The creatures circled, testing, probing, and retreating when they encountered resistance. Ethan noticed that some of the predators began avoiding certain traps altogether, indicating they were learning from mistakes and adapting quickly. Finally, as the first light of dawn touched the shelter, the predators withdrew, leaving the area temporarily calm. Ethan's body ached, his clothes were soaked and torn, but his mind was alive with satisfaction. He had faced the planet's most intelligent threats, adapted, and survived. Lyra stood beside him, her gaze steady. "You've passed another stage," she said. "The predators tested us and we responded. That's the essence of survival here. Humans are capable of extraordinary things when we work together, when we adapt, and when we learn. Never forget that." Ethan nodded, understanding fully for the first time. Survival on this planet was not a matter of strength alone. It was strategy, intelligence, observation, and courage. Every decision, every action, every moment of awareness counted. And that, he realized, was the true price of life here, a price humans were uniquely equipped to pay. As the day progressed, Ethan continued to refine his skills, maintaining systems, analyzing predator behavior, and planning contingencies. Each task reinforced his understanding. Humans were adaptable, intelligent, and resilient. They could face dangers that would destroy other species, and they could thrive where others failed. By nightfall, Ethan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had survived his first real test, faced intelligent predators, and learned the importance of vigilance, preparation, and teamwork. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a part of the shelter, a participant in its intricate systems, and a human rising to meet the challenges of a hostile world. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember this feeling, Ethan. It's not just survival. It's the proof that humans can endure, adapt, and thrive. And the more you learn, the more you'll understand the true value of the price we pay." Ethan nodded, looking out at the darkened horizon. The storm clouds were clearing, and in their place, faint rays of light illuminated the forest beyond. Somewhere out there, predators and challenges awaited, but he was ready. He had paid the price today, and tomorrow he would pay it again. And each time he would grow stronger, sharper, and more capable. Because humans, he realized, were meant to endure. Humans were meant to rise above challenges. Humans, no matter the odds, could survive and even flourish, where others could not. The morning was calm, almost deceptively so. Ethan stood at the edge of the shelter, looking out at the rocky plains that stretched far into the horizon. The storms had receded for the moment, leaving only the soft rustle of alien vegetation and distant bird-like calls from creatures he hadn't seen before. The events of the past days weighed on him. He had survived the storm, mastered the systems, and faced the intelligent predators that circled their home. Yet a part of him still felt as though the planet was hiding something Lyra had yet to reveal. Lyra appeared beside him silently, as if she had been there the entire time. "You've done well," she said. "Faster than I expected. Your understanding of the shelter, the environment, and the predators, it's impressive." Ethan smiled, though he still felt a nagging curiosity. "Lyra, why did you really bring me here? I understand the training and the price, but why me? Why risk your safety to help a stranger survive?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She gestured for him to follow her down a narrow tunnel he had never explored before. The passage was carved deep into the rock, lined with metal panels and softly glowing tubes that hummed with energy. Ethan noticed that the air was cooler here, and a faint metallic scent lingered. After a few minutes, they reached a large chamber. Ethan froze. The space was enormous, filled with strange, sophisticated equipment. Some machines pulsed with energy, others had holographic displays showing maps of the planet, atmospheric readings, and environmental patterns. Tanks of water, nutrient supplies, and mechanical devices lined the walls. Ethan felt a mix of awe and disbelief. "What is all this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra finally spoke, her tone solemn. "This shelter, it's more than a home. It's part of an ancient human project, abandoned long ago. A terraforming outpost built to make hostile planets habitable. The technology here can reshape the environment, control weather patterns, manage resources. It's powerful and it's delicate. Ethan's eyes widened. You mean humans were here before they tried to change the planet? Yes, Lyra said. But the project failed. Most humans who came here didn't survive. The planet is unforgiving. Only those who understand its rules, respect its patterns, and adapt can live. That's why I've been here alone, maintaining this shelter, waiting for someone capable enough to continue the work. You, Ethan, you are that someone. Ethan felt a rush of excitement mixed with responsibility. He had survived, yes, but now he realized the true scale of the task ahead. This was no longer just survival. It was stewardship, innovation, and responsibility on a planetary scale. Lyra led him to a central console. Holographic displays lit up as she tapped on the interface, revealing detailed maps of the surrounding terrain, weather systems, and biological data on the local wildlife. Ethan leaned forward, absorbing the information. He noticed that many of the predators they had encountered were not merely hunting. They were interacting with the environment in ways that maintained balance. Lyra had designed the shelter to coexist with them, not just to protect against them. This, Lyra said, is why the price matters. Every action you take, every decision you make affects the systems, the environment, and our survival. Humans have a unique ability to understand complexity, adapt quickly, and innovate. That's why we survive here where others cannot. But only those willing to pay the price, responsibility, vigilance, intelligence, can unlock the potential of this technology. Ethan studied the displays carefully. He could see how Lyra had modified the outpost over the years, improving efficiency, learning the patterns of storms, and even redirecting water flow to create safe zones for vegetation. The work was meticulous, almost artistic in its precision. Do you know why the previous teams failed? Ethan asked. Lyra shook her head. They underestimated the planet. They ignored the small details, overlooked patterns, and failed to respect the environment. Most humans who arrived were not prepared for the level of responsibility required. They perished and the project was abandoned. That's why this shelter exists. It is both a home and a test. Ethan nodded slowly, beginning to understand the enormity of the situation. And the predators, the storms, everything is part of the test. Lyra smiled faintly. Not a test for the planet. It's the planet's way. It is alive and it reacts to intrusions, to mistakes, to weakness. The predators, the storms, the terrain, they are challenges designed to ensure only those who can adapt will survive. And humans are among the few species capable of enduring and thriving in such conditions. Ethan felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He had been dragged into this shelter, yes, but it was no accident. He had been chosen because he could learn, adapt, and contribute to something greater than himself. The price he had paid, the responsibility, the vigilance, the hard labor, was not punishment but preparation for a much larger role. Lyra led him further into the chamber, showing him the heart of the outpost, a large, glowing core surrounded by intricate machinery. This core regulates the environmental systems. It can adjust temperature, humidity, and even influence plant growth. If we use it correctly, we can expand safe zones, support food production, and create habitats for both humans and local wildlife. But misuse it and we risk disaster. Ethan studied the core, feeling its hum resonate through the floor. So everything depends on how carefully we act. Yes, Lyra said, and that is why the price must be paid. Humans must learn, think, and act responsibly. That's what separates us from other species. Our capacity for foresight, collaboration, and adaptation is our greatest strength. Over the next several days, Lyra trained Ethan in the operation of the outpost. He learned to monitor weather systems, adjust water flow, repair energy cores, and analyze biological data on local flora and fauna. Each lesson was challenging, requiring both intellect and intuition. Ethan struggled at times, making small mistakes that threatened to disrupt the balance, but Lyra corrected him patiently, allowing him to learn through trial and error. One evening, while observing a small section of forest through the outpost sensors, Ethan noticed something unusual. A new species had appeared near the shelter, a group of creatures unlike the predators they had encountered. They were smaller, curious, and intelligent, moving in coordinated patterns as if testing the boundaries of the shelter's influence. "Lyra," he said, pointing at the display, "look at these. They're not like the predators. They're different." Lyra leaned over, studying the data. Interesting, they might be drawn to the changes we are creating. Humans can influence the environment, yes, but we must remain cautious. Every action has consequences. This is the delicate balance I mentioned. Ethan realized that the shelter was not just a refuge, it was a hub of transformation. Their actions could influence the planet, but they had to act responsibly. He felt a mixture of awe and fear. The responsibility was immense, but so was the potential. Humans were capable of shaping worlds, and this was proof. That night, Ethan lay awake, thinking about everything he had learned. The storms, the predators, the shelter, the outpost, it was all connected. Survival was no longer just about enduring conditions. It was about understanding the world, anticipating changes, and using intelligence to create opportunities. Humans could not only survive, they could thrive. The next morning, Lyra took Ethan to a section of the shelter he had never seen before, a small greenhouse filled with carefully cultivated plants. Some were alien species adapted to the planet, others were Earth plants she had brought with her. The greenhouse was a fragile ecosystem, dependent on precise control of temperature, humidity, and light. "These plants are our future food sources," Lyra explained. "If we can maintain and expand this system, we can support life on a larger scale. But every plant depends on careful attention. Neglect or mistake could destroy everything. That is another aspect of the price." Ethan nodded, understanding more clearly than ever. Every action, every decision carried weight. Humans were capable of extraordinary feats because of their intelligence, creativity, and foresight. Paying the price was not a burden. It was an opportunity to prove the power of humanity. Over the following days, Ethan applied everything he had learned. He adjusted environmental systems, repaired sensors, and even suggested improvements to the shelter's defensive mechanisms. Lyra observed, silently approving. Slowly, the shelter became more than a refuge. It was a hub of activity, a controlled environment where humans could not only survive but begin to influence the planet. Then one evening, as Ethan monitored the outer sensors, he noticed movement on the horizon, large shapes, intelligent and deliberate, approaching the shelter. These were the predators, but they were different now. They seemed to be coordinating, perhaps drawn by the changes in the environment. Lyra appeared beside him, her expression serious. "They are testing us again. But this time it is not only survival they are testing, it is our ability to influence and control the environment responsibly. Are you ready?" Ethan straightened, feeling a surge of determination. "I am. We are ready," Lyra nodded. "Good. Remember, the price is constant. Vigilance, intelligence, responsibility. Humans pay it willingly because we are capable of more than survival. We are capable of thriving." As the sun set, casting long shadows across the plains, Ethan felt a deep sense of purpose. He had been dragged into this shelter, yes, but it had been for a reason. The challenges, the predators, the storms, they were all part of the planet's test, and humans were uniquely equipped to rise to it. The revelation of the outpost's true purpose had transformed his understanding. Survival was no longer just a matter of enduring hardships. It was about stewardship, innovation, and responsibility. Humans could shape their world, protect life, and create opportunities where others would see only danger. Ethan knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges, new tests, and new opportunities to prove the extraordinary potential of humanity, and he was ready to face them. Because humans, he realized fully now, were not just survivors. Humans were innovators, thinkers, and creators. And on this harsh, storm-battered planet, they could flourish, if they were willing to pay the price. The night had been long, filled with the distant howls of predators and the soft hum of the shelter's machinery. Ethan sat beside the central core, reviewing the data from the past days. The storms had calmed for now, but he knew the planet was never truly peaceful. It was alive, intelligent, and unpredictable. Yet he felt something different tonight, a sense of readiness, of control, of partnership with Lyra and with the systems they had worked to maintain. Lyra entered silently, her eyes scanning the horizon through the reinforced viewing panels. "The predators are moving again," she said quietly, "but they're hesitant now. They've learned that the shelter is not a weakness. They respect the boundaries we've set." Ethan nodded. "It's amazing, everything we've done, it's working." Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, but it's only the beginning. Now we test the next step." The next step, Ethan realized, was more than survival. It was transformation. The outpost, the shelter, the systems, they were tools for change. Together, he and Lyra could begin to expand safe zones, influence the environment, and create conditions where life could thrive. The planet was harsh, yes, but humans had the unique ability to adapt and innovate. Lyra led Ethan to the central console, where the holographic displays of the environment flickered to life. Streams of data flowed across the panels, weather patterns, predator movement, plant growth, and water levels. Ethan could see the subtle changes they had made over the past weeks. Streams redirected to nourish plant life, barriers strengthened to protect the shelter, and sensors calibrated to anticipate every challenge. "Tonight, we activate the expansion protocol," Lyra said. "It will extend the influence of the shelter, creating microenvironments where vegetation and wildlife can coexist safely. But we must be precise. Any mistake could cause imbalance, and the planet will respond." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he touched the controls. The responsibility was immense, but he felt ready. He had learned from every challenge, faced intelligent predators, and understood the delicate balance of the environment. The price he had paid, the labor, the vigilance, the observation, had prepared him for this moment. Together, they activated the protocol. A low hum filled the chamber as energy flowed through the systems. Channels of water redirected with precision, and sensors adjusted the microclimate. Lights flickered across the greenhouse as temperature and humidity balanced perfectly, allowing new growth to begin. Ethan watched, amazed, as seeds sprouted, leaves unfurled, and small plants thrived under controlled conditions. "The first stage is complete," Lyra said. "Now we observe and adapt. Humans don't just act, we learn, adjust, and innovate." Hours passed as they monitored the shelter and its expanding influence. Predators moved cautiously at the boundaries, some observing, some retreating. The smaller, intelligent creatures began to explore the new safe zones, their movements careful but curious. Ethan realized that the planet was not an enemy, it was a partner, responding to their actions with a balance of challenge and opportunity. As dawn approached, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the transformed landscape. The shelter no longer appeared as a lone outpost in a hostile world. Surrounding it, small patches of greenery thrived, water flowed steadily, and wildlife adapted to the new conditions. The predators and other creatures respected the boundaries, moving in patterns that suggested intelligence and awareness. Ethan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They had survived, adapted, and now they were thriving. The planet, once a place of relentless danger, was beginning to coexist with human ingenuity. He turned to Lyra, who was observing the horizon with quiet satisfaction. "You've done well, Ethan," she said. "You've paid the price, learned the lessons, and now you're shaping the world. That is what humans do. They endure, adapt, and thrive." Ethan smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you. You taught me everything, the price, the patience, the strategy. Humans can survive anywhere, yes, but we can also build, create, and transform. I finally understand that." Lyra nodded. "Exactly, and this is just the beginning. We've created a foundation, a home, a micro-world where life can thrive. But the planet is vast, and our influence can grow. Together, we can expand safe zones, cultivate more food, and even prepare for others, humans who may arrive someday to join us. This is how humanity spreads, survives, and flourishes." The next days were filled with tireless work. Ethan and Lyra monitored the environmental systems, expanded safe zones, and guided the intelligent creatures toward areas where they could coexist with the growing vegetation. They repaired old systems, upgraded energy cores, and ensured that every action maintained balance. The planet tested them at every step. Storms arose unexpectedly, predators challenged their boundaries, and equipment occasionally failed. But they responded with intelligence, coordination, and resilience. One afternoon, while observing a small herd of creatures navigating the safe zones, Ethan realized the significance of their work. They were not just surviving, they were shaping the environment, creating harmony between humans and the planet. The predators, once a constant threat, now moved with caution, respecting the boundaries. The smaller creatures explored safely, and the plants flourished, creating a stable ecosystem. Lyra approached him quietly. "Do you see, Ethan? This is why humans endure. Not just for survival, but for growth, innovation, and creation. We are capable of turning challenges into opportunities. The price we pay, the labor, vigilance, intelligence, is worth every moment. Humans don't just adapt, we flourish." Ethan nodded, feeling a profound sense of purpose. The shelter had become more than a refuge. It was a hub of transformation, a testament to human ingenuity and a beacon of life in a harsh world. He understood now that the price was not hardship, it was responsibility, creativity, and courage. And paying that price allowed humans to achieve greatness. That night, a storm approached from the north, but this time it was different. They were ready. The shelter systems responded automatically, redirecting water, reinforcing barriers, and monitoring predator movements. Ethan and Lyra observed from the central chamber, calm and confident. The storm raged, but the microenvironments held strong. Trees swayed but did not break, water flowed as intended, and the creatures adapted to the changes without danger. When the storm finally passed, Ethan stepped outside. The world glistened with fresh rain, the greenery vibrant, and the air crisp. He looked at the horizon and saw evidence of their work: small forests, safe water channels, and thriving wildlife. The planet, once unyielding, was now a place where life could exist alongside humans. Lyra joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Look at what we've accomplished. Survival was the first step. Adaptation was the second. Now we thrive. This is humanity's power. We endure, we learn, and we create possibilities where others see only danger." Ethan smiled, a sense of joy and pride swelling in his chest. He thought of the journey, the storm, the predators, the labor, the lessons, and the constant vigilance. Every challenge had prepared him for this moment. Every price he had paid had allowed him to achieve something extraordinary. Humans were not just survivors, they were innovators, builders, and creators. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Lyra expanded their influence further. They cultivated larger gardens, built more shelters for potential newcomers, and developed strategies to coexist with the planet's intelligent predators. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. They observed patterns, predicted environmental changes, and adapted systems to create stability and growth. Wordless nights were filled with monitoring equipment, planning expansions, and quietly celebrating small victories. Ethan felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced before. He had not only survived the harshest conditions, but had learned the true meaning of human resilience and ingenuity. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight lit the shelter, Ethan and Lyra stood together at the highest point, overlooking their growing domain. The greenery spread farther than he had imagined, wildlife moved safely within boundaries, and the planet seemed calmer, almost acknowledging their careful stewardship. Lyra spoke softly. "This is the reward for paying the price. Humans survive, humans adapt, humans flourish. And now we've created a place where life can grow and humans can thrive even in the harshest worlds." Ethan looked at her, feeling the weight and beauty of her words. "We've done it," he said. "Not just survived, we've made a home, and this is only the beginning." Lyra smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her in weeks. "Yes, and humanity's story is just beginning here. Others may come, and they will learn what we have paid to achieve. They will inherit the lessons, the systems, and the hope that humans can flourish anywhere. That is our legacy." Ethan looked at the shelter, the thriving plants, and the intelligent creatures exploring their safe zones. He thought of the storms, the predators, and the countless challenges they had overcome. And he understood fully. Humans were meant to endure, adapt, and create. They were capable of turning hardship into opportunity, danger into growth, and survival into triumph. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the transformed landscape, Ethan felt a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose. The journey had been difficult, the price had been high, but the reward was extraordinary. Humans, he realized, could thrive anywhere. And on this storm-battered alien planet, they had done exactly that. The new dawn was not just the end of a long night, it was the beginning of a future where humans could survive, adapt, and flourish, no matter the challenges, no matter the odds. Ethan and Lyra had proven it. Together, they had paid the price, and together, they had created life in a world that had once seemed impossible to conquer. And that world, now alive with potential, awaited the next step of humanity's journey.